Chicago Bears could be in position to land the #1 overall pick in this upcoming draft. Let's talk about it. What is going on, y'all? Faiz Sports Talk back at it with another video talking, of course, NFL, here to talk about the Chicago Bears, guys. So if you're a Bears fan, hit the big red subscribe button down below. People, make sure you are following me on all my social media platforms. All right, so let's talk about this, people. I have been basically telling you guys that the Bears are a lock for the #2 overall pick, for most of the second half of the season, and they have been. But last weekend changed that dramatically. Well, almost dramatically, in that the Houston Texans, the team that has been in the driver's seat for the #1 overall pick, got themselves a W. Yes, that's right. The Houston Texans won a football game in what feels like forever as they beat down the Tennessee Titans, who are starting their backup quarterback, Malik Willis. And yeah, folks, the Texans won. Now, what does that mean? That means that the Texans now have only one less win than the Chicago Bears. The Texans are 2-12-1, and the Bears are 3-12. Now, very important here because of that tie that the Texans have. I believe they got in week 1 of the season or somewhere early on at that point. That tie is important because if the Bears lose out over their next 2 games, and there's a very good chance of that happening. They're playing the Detroit Lions, who are still fighting for their playoff lives, and the Minnesota Vikings, who are playing for the #1 seed in the NFC, so both teams have clear motivation. So if the Bears lose those 2 games, they will finish the season at a record of 3-14, okay? The Texans, on the other hand, they're right now 2-12-1. Well, if they lose the rest of their 2 games, they finish 2-14-1, and they have the #1 overall pick still. But if they win just even one of their next 2 games, they fall to the #2 spot. And that is because they have a tie in a game that the Chicago Bears don't. So the Texans have the following teams remaining on their schedule. They play the Jacksonville Jaguars at home, and then they play the Indianapolis Colts on the road. The Jaguars, it's going to be a little tough, definitely. I'd pick them to beat the Texans, the Jaguars, just because they're a better team. Trevor Lawrence is playing the best football of his career, and, we are talking about a superior team. But is it, the most unconscionable thing to think that the Jaguars could lose to the Texans? No, it could happen, but most likely the Texans will lose that game. But the game after that, they play on the road at Indy. And right now, I'm not willing to say anything's locked with the Colts. They're starting Nick Foles, their 3rd-string quarterback. This is a team with Jeff Saturday as head coach, who has no coaching experience. A team that's beaten up, a team that's lost Jonathan Taylor, a team that's given up, and a team that really has nothing to play for, and a team that's kind of folded over. Remember, they obviously blew that lead to the Vikings, the biggest collapse in NFL history in terms of giving up the most points in a lead by 33. Like, this Colts team is broken. I can definitely see a scenario where the Texans win that game. And if they win that game, they finish with a final record of 3-13-1. And that is better than 3-14. And so they would fall down to #2, and the Bears would go back up to #1. Or not go back up. They would go up to #1. All right? So the Bears can get the #1 overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. Now, I will say this. If this does end up happening and the Bears get the #1 overall pick, I don't think it changes a lot of things for the Bears because they're not going to be drafting a quarterback regardless. And the guys that they're looking at, if they stay at this spot, they're still going to be the same guys that they're looking at if they go up to the #1 overall pick and they do end up picking a guy, which I think would be a mistake. I think they should trade down. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about them trading down. If you have the #1 overall pick in a draft in which you got CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, 2 quarterbacks projected to go in the 1st round, and there are so many quarterback-needy teams, you can charge a king's ransom. I'm talking about a blank check. All right, at the #2 overall spot, you still had a lot of leverage, and you could have had a lot of teams interested. But at the #1 overall spot, I mean, my goodness, we could be talking, folks, and I'm not even being hyperbolic here. We could be talking about trading down that #1 overall pick for potentially 4 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. Like, it's happened. the number 2 overall pick was traded for 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick. Like, it is possible. So this would be a home run for the Bears if they got the number 1 overall pick. So that's what I'm hoping for here, that the Texans somehow beat the Colts in that last game. The Bears obviously end up losing out because getting that number 1 overall pick would be incredible. So just wanted to give you guys that quick note there so you guys know that we are playing for that number 1 seed. So let's see what number 1 pick. I wish we were playing for the number 1 seed, but let's see what happens here, folks, if we do end up losing out. It's sad at this point, but we are on hashtag Tankathon watch. That's what it's come down to for us. But yeah, let's see what happens. Do we get the number 2 or the number 1 overall pick? Leave a comment down below as always. Thanks for watching.